Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Adobe CTO, Kevin Lynch.
Good morning. It's really exciting to be here, and welcome to Create the Web. We're on an exciting journey right now, of course, as the web's been evolving, and all of you have been helping move it forward, and we've been excited to participate in that as well. And there's been amazing progress. And today, this morning, we're going to be focusing on how the web has evolved and around HTML5, and where we see this headed, and what Adobe is doing around HTML5. And we're looking at this both in terms of expression, how you can express yourselves using HTML5 and new capabilities being added, as well as, of course, it's inspiring an array of new tools, and you're going to see a bunch of that this morning here. And web technologies, we think, is really the future of content creation and app development. And we're really working to invest to make sure that we can raise the level of expressiveness and build a really strong foundation for this across the web. And this is really central to what we're doing at Adobe. So we're here to help you make the web even better and make it possible for you to make even cooler things for the web. So when we look at where we've come from, it's really interesting. And I've been on a journey here through this for a while. And in the early days, we had a pretty simple model. We had a personal computer, and we had two browsers, basically, that were primarily being used, Netscape and, of course, IE. And now the world is a much more complicated place than these early days. And the modern web now is a very much richer environment with lots of different browsers, many more browsers than before, a lot of innovation happening in the browsers, as well as a lot of innovation happening on the client side, not only personal computers, of course, but mobile phones, tablets, television sets, all kinds of these different form factors. And this is really the new character of this modern web, and it's an explosion in complexity. Your job is getting harder as you're trying to create not only these great engaging experiences, but have them work reliably across all these different browsers and environments. So this is requiring a lot of new innovation in how we can productively create all these things. And so we're really focused on helping you drive this future of content across all these different form factors and browsers. And the thing that we're really motivated by is the stuff that you make. The really inspiring experiences that you guys all create is really what is important to us, and it's really the soul of Adobe. The beautiful things you make are really what keeps us going. And the tools themselves are increasingly using web technologies as well. And you're going to see more and more of that, where you'll see actually some of the software being used to create web experiences are built with web experiences themselves. And this is really the platform for a whole new next generation of software. And you can see this starting to happen at Adobe a bit. We're doing something called Creative Cloud now, which is a move to a cloud-based service combined with a whole array of great desktop tools and also mobile software. And Creative Cloud is really embracing this change. It's built with HTML5. It's built to be responsive. So if you look at your files in Creative Cloud across different devices or just resize the window, you can start seeing it respond to the different form factors and relaying out intelligently, as all of you are starting to do now with your own work. So we're living this ourselves, and we're learning a lot as we're building our software this way. And we're really betting on this as the future of how we're building our experiences. And the way we're doing this, these contributions to the web, are, of course, through a couple of ways. One is standards organizations. So we've been part of W3C since the very early days. Our focus in W3C around the web is around, of course, HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, and technologies that really enable this next generation. And we're helping move these standards forward. So we're very active in the working groups. In particular, you're going to see a lot about CSS today. It's an area where there's been a lot of recent progress. But we're also making code contributions. The best way to help move the web forward is a combination of standards work as well as actual code that turns the standards into reality. And so engineers at Adobe are writing code, contributing to WebKit. And of course, WebKit's the basis of Safari and Chrome and a number of other browsers. And then these models tend to be also implemented by other browser teams. So you really get kind of a consolidation around the standard over time. So we're being very active on this, and our aim is to increase the expressiveness of the web. Now, in addition to doing all the great runtime work, there's an opportunity to make a lot of new tools, and we really like making tools at Adobe. So we're focused on making it really easy for you to build these great experiences for this modern web. And we also want to open up this web development frontier to an even wider range of designers and developers. So we're taking some new approaches in how we're building our software and designing it. And one of the reasons we called this event Create the Web you might say, hey, the web's already created. Why do we have something called Create the Web? And it's because the web's being created every day. The work that you're doing in creating new experiences, the work engineers are doing on browsers, the work that Adobe's doing with tools and contributing to WebKit, these things are all happening every day, and the web continues to evolve and change at a pretty rapid pace, and that's continuing to happen. So you play a very important role in moving the web forward and creating what this next generation of the web is going to be. So through the experiences you're making, keep pushing the edges, keep giving feedback, keep trying to do the impossible to make the best experience, and that will keep this engine going of refining and refining and improving to get even the next level beyond where we are today. So keep pushing those boundaries and define the future together. The areas that we've been focusing on at Adobe are a few areas for the web. One is doing magazine-style layout. This is some really advanced layout techniques. We've been doing, of course, layout for a long time, and we're bringing a lot of our knowledge to enabling the same kind of sophisticated layout you might do in, say, InDesign to create magazines to what you can do with HTML and CSS and JavaScript on the web. And so this is something that we've already been working on for a while. There's some great technologies already called CSS exclusions and regions that are starting to be deployed. And we're looking to move our magazine publishing to really take advantage of HTML5 for magazine layouts in things like Digital Publishing Suite, for example. And right now, Digital Publishing Suite is the #1 way to create magazines for iPad and iOS. So it's a great success for us, and we're really excited about where that's going. And in addition to that, we're looking at doing cinematic effects, graphical effects, things called filters. We can change the images that you're seeing at runtime, as well as advanced graphical effects, doing things like blending and compositing. A lot of stuff from traditional imaging and printing technology we're bringing into the interactive world of the web, and it's going to really open up whole new frontiers of stuff that you're going to be able to create. And when we're doing all of these things, we can imagine all this stuff, and we can work in the standards groups on it, which we do. But really, to make this stuff reality, you need to get the technologies into the browsers. And as we talked about, there's a number of browsers out there right now. What we're focused on doing is contributing code to WebKit. And that means that the changes that we're doing, for example, the filters work I was just talking about, can go into WebKit, and then it can be adopted across the browsers. And this cycle is happening right now. And I'm really happy to say that the work we've been doing in W3C and in WebKit on filters is making it into browsers right at this moment. And in fact, the work that we've done is included in iOS 6. And so I'm able to show you the filters work running on iPhone 5 now. So let's take a look at what we've been doing here on iOS. So I have an iPhone here. This is the iPhone 5. This is actually the same venue that they announced iPhone 5 at. We found this one backstage. So I'm kidding. We went and got one. All right. So here I've got my iPhone, and here I'm going to launch Safari. This is the built-in Safari on iOS, and it now supports the filters using CSS that I was just talking about that we've been working on together with others in W3C, and we've been working on in terms of WebKit. So I can apply some filters here to this image on a web page, and you can see it's modifying the image that you're seeing here immediately when I press on some of these standard built-in filters. Now, this isn't making a round trip to the server, as many of the graphics editing applications you might use today do. It's actually happening right in the browser on the client at runtime. So this makes it much more responsive. There's not big network traffic reloading the image each time, and so you can build some really great, richer imaging applications right inside of JavaScript using CSS and the new filters. And so you can see you can use them even in combination. We've got some built-in filters that we've put together, and you can have all kinds of really cool effects on top of this image. So this is all happening on iOS right now. You can start playing with these yourself using WebKit and iOS. And we're continuing to move forward beyond this. So those are some built-in filters. I also want to show you where we're going with custom filters. And this is something where you can actually start building your own graphics imaging filters and apply them at runtime in the browser. And this is an example here. We're going to be looking at the Chrome developer build. And it's a Chromium. And you can see that we've got a web page with a bunch of different blog posts on it. And this is all done with CSS, so with filters and CSS. And if I scroll down here, you can see there's another filter making these little circle images. And if I want to look at the code here, there's another page flip effect, which is another custom filter in CSS. And you can see this is applying a Gaussian blur and some specular lighting and some other stuff. And so you can start creating your own filters to apply at runtime in your own web experiences. And when you start creating these things, you can actually go down to the level of writing in the shader language that's used to run on the GPU. So many of these graphics effects that you've seen in the web to date all run on the CPU. Now we can actually start taking advantage of hardware acceleration in the GPU, and to do that, you can actually start writing down to the low-level shader language that you can then build into a CSS filter that you can apply. So there's a lot of deep power here for you to create your own experiences. And when you start actually writing these shaders and these filters, it'd be nice if you had a nice tool to do that with. So we've been working on a little utility here called Filter Lab, and I'm switching over here now to the Safari developer build. And so we've now looked at both Chrome and Safari here running some of these filters. And so here's an example inside CSS Filter Lab where you can actually do some of the both built-in effects that I showed you on iOS, like inversion and opacity and things like that. So for example, I can change the opacity here, or if I want to, I can go change the saturation of the image so it blows out the colors. And just by changing the slider, this is all HTML, user interface, CSS, JavaScript making this happen at runtime, and it's all live and interactive. And at the bottom, you can see the actual code that's being generated to do this. It's a WebKit filter, saturate, and when I drag the slider, you can see the number changing down there and the image changing, so it's all happening live. Now, the WebKit prefix is there because this stuff is still in development, and of course, over time, through multiple browsers and standards, we'll get that to just be filter as part of the CSS attribute. But right now, it's WebKit filter. Okay, so that's some of the built-in stuff. Let's look at some of the more complicated stuff you can do here. These are custom filters that are more ambitious in terms of the image processing that they can do. And I can do things like the page curl effect. And this is done using some very simple CSS here. And I can change the curl direction, for example. And you can see it's changing the curl direction. Isn't that cool? Yeah. Except if you're trying to read the page. That's not so cool. All right. Use these wisely. Okay. So you can see that this is happening not only in 2D, but it's actually a 3D effect that's being applied to that page. Isn't that awesome? That's CSS doing that. All right. So now what we're going to do here is apply multiple effects. So I have a page turn here, and I can actually make this animate too. So let's animate it. So I'll go to the end there, and I'll add another one, and I'll make the curl radius be 0, be all the way up. Okay. Now when I play the animation, you can see that it's flipping the page. And this is something you can very simply do here with CSS. And I can apply another filter as well to this animation, and I can make it look crumpled too. So here I'm going to add the crumple filter. So now it looks like a crumpled piece of paper. And if I want, I can animate this as well. So we'll put the playback down to the beginning, and I can change the crumple amount to 0, so you can see how crumply you can make it there. I'll go down to 0, so you can see it will animate both the crumple effect and the page flip when I press play. So very easy to combine these things. And these are the different parameters. They're all editable, human-readable text you can go change. And even the animation syntax looks like this. You can see that it just has two different states, 0% and 100%, meaning the beginning and the end of the animation, and then the attributes in each, and it automatically calculates all the differences between the two. And you can put keyframes in the middle at 50% or 25%, whatever you want to do to make the animation go. And then you can just copy this and paste it into your web page and start using it as part of the CSS that you're working on your page. So this is something that we think is going to be very helpful in starting to edit these filters. And when we started playing with this, we thought it'd be even cooler if you could share these with other people. Of course, GitHub is a really popular way to share things right now. So let's get rid of these and get a filter from GitHub. So I can actually import a filter here from GitHub using the gist. So I'll go over there and get a filter called the plasma filter. I'll just copy the URL from this page. You can see the filters code down here. And I'm going to paste that in, and it will actually bring it in from GitHub right here into my application. And I can start seeing this kind of plasma effect that I'm applying to the page. And here's the actual fragment shader code that makes it work. So you can see there's some code here. This is kind of lower level code, but still readable, and you can still edit it and figure out the different kinds of effects you might want to make. It does take a special kind of person to understand some of the math to do this. But you can wrap this into your own CSS. So basically, someone can write the deeper shader language stuff, and then you can wrap it in a simple plasma shader language that you can then change the parameters of. And one of the things we did when we were working on this is actually supporting syntax checking. So you can start editing this shader language. You can see it immediately gives me an error, and it says, hey, this is not matching any function I know about. And this is something you can't do with editing shader languages today, particularly in the browser. And we've really worked hard to make this possible for you to do this kind of editing. And we've got a syntax checker written in JavaScript that checks the shader language syntax as you're typing. In fact, it's updating the image as I'm typing, too. So if I change this to tan, you can see it immediately updates the image, showing you what that shader language is going to actually do to the image that you're editing. So a lot of great innovation here happening with these filter effects. And you're able to publish this, of course, to GitHub yourself, and then share that with friends, and they can start using it in their own websites. So a lot of innovation happening from Adobe in terms of graphical rendering and imaging on the web. And we've actually open sourced CSS Filter Lab, and that's available today. So you can go to html.adobe.com, and you can check that out. And that's just a start for the stuff that you're going to be seeing this morning. Now, the future of the web is really exciting, and it's a very cooperative one, and it's really up to all of us to move this thing forward together. And I hope that you have a great day here and enjoy the really wide array of new stuff you're going to see here across a whole range of new tools for the modern web. And I hope you have a lot of fun here. And so to share this new generation of new tools, I'd like to please welcome Danny Winokur. Danny? Hey, Danny.
Thanks, Kevin.
Welcome.
Thank you, Kevin. And good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited about the amazing progress that is being made to make the web so much more of an expressive place. Of course, we all want to have great tools that are going to make it easier for us to take advantage of all of these latest capabilities. And since the beginning of the web, we've made it our business to make such tools. Many of you probably rely today on such tools as Photoshop, Illustrator, and Fireworks to create the core graphical assets of your web creations. And Dreamweaver, of course, has become the market-leading all-in-one web production tool. In fact, this morning, I'm pleased to let you know that we are releasing a subscription update to Dreamweaver CS6 that adds important new capabilities for HTML5 tags and integration with Adobe Edge Animate, as well as a bunch of other features. But the latest interactive capabilities of the web, the kinds of things that Kevin was showing you this morning, and the explosion of the devices that he was describing have really changed the way that you work and made a lot of complexity. It's gotten really hard now to deal with all of the intersection of these devices and these capabilities, and in many cases, you're relying upon a patchwork of tools that, in many instances, just have not yet caught up to your needs. The modern web needs modern tools. We've gone out over the past couple of years and spent a bunch of time talking to many of you to try to understand where your pain points are and what would make things fun and easy again to develop on the web. Today is a key milestone in that collaboration that we've begun with you, and I am incredibly excited and proud to introduce to you Adobe Edge Tools and Services. We've started fresh in developing these new tools and services and have really taken a new approach to our own development. We've built them from the ground up, and we've worked hard to make it so that they are really enjoyable and fun to use and easy to use in creating expressive content and applications that really leverage all of the latest capabilities and the reach of the modern web. In fact, some of these tools and services are themselves built entirely on web technologies. As we set out to build these tools and services, we thought to ourselves, wouldn't it be great if we had a set of tools that were optimized to create mobile-ready content for the web and for applications? And wouldn't it be great if we did them in a way where each tool was focused on an individual task so that each tool would work well individually, but these tools could also work really well together, and importantly, they could be mixed and matched with other third-party tools and services that may not be from Adobe. And we also thought it would be critical as we design these tools to make sure that they improved productivity, but did so in a way that did not hide the underlying code of the web technologies being used. So let's take a look at what we've done. A number of you may be familiar with the project that paved the way for us, Adobe Edge Animate. Edge Animate began about 2 years ago as an experiment in standards-based animation. We wanted to see what we could do to make it easy and more accessible for designers to take advantage of these latest motion and animation capabilities that had come onto the web. Edge Animate became a great example of the new release early and often approach that we've taken in developing all of these tools and services. We've gone through many public previews over the past year and we've received a wealth of feedback from all of you in the community that has been instrumental in shaping our development of this tool. So what is Edge Animate? It's a tool for creating rich, interactive, animated content using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And it delivers animations that provide a consistent experience across all modern browsers. It offers you the ability to do very precise authoring on a visual timeline that follows in the footsteps of world-class timeline-based tools like After Effects and Flash Pro. And yet, it also offers you very fine-grained control with a panel that allows you to go in and directly edit the JavaScript. Let me show you an example of what you can do. There's a really talented designer down in Los Angeles, a guy named Patrick Williams, who does a bunch of great freelance work. And he used a number of the preview releases that we've had out of Edge Animate to create this portfolio site that shows off his work and what he's done. And you can see that he used this really beautiful, immersive set of capabilities to create a really rich, creative, and beautiful site that lets you see his work. You can apply filters here to say you want to see only his logos, or you want to see what he does in print or on the web. And then you can click in and go and see the work. So again, giving him the ability to really express himself, express his own creativity, and create something really beautiful and more immersive than what has traditionally been possible in a standard web browser. But you're probably wondering, how do you actually do that in the tool? How do you create a site like this? So to help us out this morning, I'd like to bring out Adobe's creative evangelist, Paul Tranny, who's going to stay with me during the morning, use all of the Edge tools and services to build out a real web project, starting with Edge Animate. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Danny. It's good to be here. Hello, sir.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
What are you going to build for us?
I would love to show you. I have a project going on right now. If we just take a look. And really what I'm going to be building is a project around 40 years of technology and trends. Okay, so it's going to be multifaceted. It's going to work across screens. I want to have a responsive site. I'm also going to be making an app later.
Great.
So I'm starting off here in Edge Animate. You can see I have it open. In fact, I have an HTML file open in Edge Animate. So I can literally open up that HTML and start working with
It's just a regular
content.
HTML file. You just open it right up.
Exactly. So,
Yep.
and that's what I have here. So I can position elements all I want. In fact, if I just select this Polaroid camera, if you'll notice off to the side, look, I can make this responsive and make it more fluid by changing it from an exact pixel base to a percentage base. So that will change.
You get some scalability in what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's going to work out really well as we get even down to these smaller screens.
Nice.
So I'm just flipping that switch there, and I can start to animate this content. So I'm going to start with this content actually down here in this wheel. So in order to animate it, all I need to do is move that object right down here. At this point in my timeline, if you notice, you can see those keyframes appear. So as I move these objects, it generates these keyframes. Okay, so this is huge, being able to do this rather than writing lines of code. It actually generates that for me.
And how do you get them to go up? What do you have to do?
All I need to do is scrub down in the timeline, say about a second in, and then move them to that new location. Move them out.
Oh, I
just
see. And
like
then there on
that.
the timeline, you can see it's actually adding the
start to
animation
see
for
it
you.
build.
Yep.
In fact, for this Polaroid, I can actually, maybe it starts out kind of rotated, but I can manipulate any of these properties in my properties panel and have it animate into place.
Yep.
So sliding in, maybe readjusting that however I want. You can see it generates all that content.
Nice.
So I'll just click play. You can see that content slide out, and I have some other content in there as well. And I do want to show you that, but I want to do one more thing, because this is a pretty straightforward animation as that slides out. It's a linear easing is what's going on, and I'd like to add more finesse to it. So I can add these algorithms, such as maybe an ease out. In this case, I'll add a
So that's going to give it like a little bit of a bounce? Or?
Yeah, a slight bounce, but just gives it a little more character. And I love just having this control with this animation. I'll just click play. You can see that play through. You can see that other content flow out as well.
Great.
So I can do that with my content. I want to go beyond animation, because I also want to add some interactivity to these elements.
So can you actually take one of those symbols and make it come to life, yeah?
Yeah, I can jump right in here. It doesn't have to be a symbol, could be any item, but really it's just a matter of selecting it.
Yeah.
And you'll notice I have
I
the
see,
ability
yeah.
to add any sort of function I want. So I can say, you know what, on click, on rollover. We even have touch events in here. I'm just going to start with a click. And you jump in here, and
So this
then
is
you'd
now
write.
a JavaScript panel.
Yeah, so you'd write, and maybe, I don't know, maybe some of you would write, I don't know what you'd write in here. But you'd write something if you don't know JavaScript. Nonetheless, what you could do is you could use these code snippets off to the side. And this is a great place to start.
So you can either write your own JavaScript or you can use these pre-built snippets,
Yeah, you
depending
got
on your
it.
level of ability.
And there's even some error handling in
Great.
case you are writing your own or even modifying what's there. All right, so with that in place, I'll just run it. And again, I'm just running this content in a browser. It's an HTML page that I was just working on. You can see that content animates out. I can
Nice.
click,
Oh, you
and
gotta
then it
take a picture.
generates a photo
Oh,
of
look
Danny.
at that,
Like that.
Paul.
Do I still have a
Pulling
job?
surprises on me
All right.
from my olden days, huh?
Yeah, so it's helped me out a ton with this project.
Beautiful.
I'm going to be seeing more of it as well. So.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Beautiful. So you can see how Edge Animate allows you to create rich, interactive, and animated content using the visual timeline that Paul just showed you, and how it also incorporates that JavaScript panel so that if you're comfortable with JavaScript, you can go in there and edit directly or use those pre-built-in code snippets. So after more than 2 years, 7 preview releases, and more than 500,000 downloads, it gives me great pleasure and pride to introduce to you this morning the release of Adobe Edge Animate 1.0. This is a new world-class tool, and we can't wait to see what you're going to build with it. We're introducing Edge Animate with flexible pricing options, including the ability to get a perpetual license for $499. You can subscribe to the product standalone for $14.99. And of course, we've included it as part of the Adobe Creative Cloud. But hold your tweets for a second. Thank you. As I mentioned, you guys have been instrumental in helping us to create this tool through this partnership that we've begun during the preview development of this tool. And we really appreciate all of this help. So it gives me also great pleasure to let you know that we are introducing Edge Animate with an introductory price of free. We'll have details at the end of the keynote on how you can get your free copy. But we want everybody, whether you're here on the stream or anywhere in the world, go get your free copy of Edge Animate. Give it a try. Go do some amazing work and show us what it is that you can create. Now, motion graphics that we've been talking about are, of course, clearly important and very exciting. But page layout and design are also critical to creating modern web experiences. As Kevin mentioned to you, web experiences need to look great across a broad range of devices, and these devices all have different screens, different orientations, different pixel densities, resolutions, and it can frankly be a real challenge for web designers and developers to make sites look great on all of these different screens. There really are 2 general options that are used. One is to actually create multiple versions of your site and your pages for each and every screen that you want to support and have your site look good on. That, of course, is a difficult and expensive process that is often tedious, but it produces a good result of controlling the final output, but very difficult to maintain. The alternative is to use responsive design, which has the advantage of a single implementation of your site that is going to respond dynamically and adjust to the different screen sizes on which it's being viewed. Unfortunately, responsive design does present a new set of challenges for designers and developers. It can be difficult to create this way. You either have a designer create a single comp and then leave it to the developer to interpret that comp in code on the single implementation of the page, and that usually results in something that the designer is not so happy about. Or, alternatively, the designer does the work and creates all of those individual comps, and then the developer has to figure out a way to implement them all in the single responsive site, which again can create a real maintenance nightmare. there hasn't been any easy way for the designer or the developer to see what they're doing visually in real time. So they have to go in and actually work with the code and actually use CSS media queries, go in and tweak the CSS, reload it, test it, further edit it, reload it, and test it. We haven't had a tool that naturally fits into the modern workflows that we're now using and allows visual creation of responsive designs. We are building that tool. We're still in development, so we're not releasing anything today, but we want to give you a sneak peek of what we are working on. We think you're going to be excited about what we call Adobe Edge Reflow. Reflow, yeah, go ahead. Someone's excited back there, I heard. There you go. Reflow allows you to design for all of these different screens that I was mentioning at once directly in HTML. And it uses a customizable CSS grid system to allow you to do that. And Reflow is one of those tools that I mentioned that is itself built entirely in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. What that means is that there's no export translation involved because you're already working directly on a web-based design surface. So Paul, why don't you show us how you can use Reflow in development to actually build out the homepage of the site you started?
Yeah, I would love to. And how you'd start out usually is you'd start out in Photoshop. So here I am in Photoshop. I designed that desktop experience. I'd take it, then I would start to chop up everything, all the graphics, export them out, and I would have to make sure I include the notes of CSS.
So this is the traditional process you would have to go through.
Yeah, just like take those graphics, throw them over the wall, give them to the developer with some notes. Hopefully, what you get back is what you gave them, is what you hope happens.
And keep those fingers crossed.
Yeah, and honestly, you're using a tool that's unaware of CSS and what the web can do. Okay, so there has to be a better way. Oh, and let me remind you that I'd have to do this for, say, a tablet experience.
And over and over again, like I was talking about.
Yeah, you got it. So I can use Reflow to execute this. So I'd still export out my graphics, and then I would launch Reflow. As I open it up right here, you can see here I am in Adobe Edge Reflow. I have some graphics already placed.
So those are the assets you took out of Photoshop, and you just put them now on your page, which is that web design surface.
Yeah, and I literally just added an image, dropped them in, and started working with them. In fact, if I wanted to add a sidebar over here, I can quickly add a box, otherwise known as an HTML div.
Yep.
Creating that asset right here as I just kind of get this lined up based on the grid system that I already have set up, and I can start to stylize it as well.
I see. So now you're actually working directly in CSS, these objects that you're putting on the screen.
Yeah, so what you typically type in, say, border radius. Well, here, change that to 30 pixels. It'll round to that corner. Let's round the other corner.
Yep.
Just like that.
Nice.
Let's give it a drop shadow
Make it match
of black, and there's my drop shadow, adding that in exactly the way I want it, visually being able to see that and generating, you guessed it, generating, right, the CSS for it. So if we take a peek right down here.
Oh, so there's your actual code.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
So I know I have.
But you can then take that and drop it into your project.
Yeah, you can drop it directly in, and you'll get exactly what you see here, which is nice. Scrolling up, I'll just quickly drop in also my asset that I created earlier, because I did actually create this Edge Animate piece, and I'm just going to place this in for position only. I can drop.
Oh, I see. So that way you at least have a sense for how your overall page looks, and there's your animation.
Yeah, exactly. So just to give me an idea, I'm really generating CSS as it stands right now. So from there, I can export out the CSS, but there's more it can do. I'm dropping in all this content. By default, it is flexible, so you can see how that content works.
That scaling you were talking about with that percentage stuff,
and I can lock it down if I want. I have full control, but even as I start to shrink this up to more of a tablet size, it starts to break down, especially those photos.
Yeah, they're getting tight.
So I can add a breakpoint right there. So I added one at about 900 pixels. Okay, and that adds a media query.
So that's like a tablet width, approximately.
Yeah, so I can have my tablet width, the same graphics, and I can start to manipulate this. In fact, these 4 images, let's go ahead and remove one, or basically hide it. It's still there, and start to adjust these other items as I'm doing now.
I see, so you can spread them out, give them a little bit more space, and make it that it's going to look cleaner.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
And I don't have to recreate any of the assets in a new PSD or a new Photoshop file or anything. It's literally working with those same assets, creating this layout. And I can really start to customize it. But let's take a peek again right down here at the CSS.
Oh, I see, and it's actually showing you that media query.
Yeah,
Nice.
exactly. Let's bring it down a little more. Let's go down to, oh, that's looking really tight to our mobile view.
So this is like smartphone now.
Adding that same a breakpoint, otherwise known as a media query.
The animation's looking pretty crowded.
Yeah,
the
you know what?
pictures are too.
Let's go ahead and take that animation since you mentioned it and just turn that off, because for the mobile experience, I just want them to get directly to the content.
Yep.
Coming in here, I can start to not delete, but just hide the content that I don't need.
You're going to use just one picture at the top?
Yeah, let's just
Okay.
like stretch this out, and they can kind of click through it, and I can adjust this content further as well.
Right,
But
so
I'm
it moves
quickly,
down to scroll. Yeah, makes sense.
yeah, kind of setting this up just right, all generating that CSS as we take a peek. Say, for instance, with this image, you can see.
And there's your next media query, right?
Yeah,
Nice.
again, scaling up, we can see how it changes from mobile to tablet, clear to the desktop
Nice.
experience. In fact, what you'd then do is you would give it to the developer, and they'd start to
There you
use
go.
that content in the real experience, and you'd end up with something like this. With the animation, you can see the real
There it
content
drops,
in there,
and then it drops again. Nice.
right down there, and we can click through those photos. as
Beautiful.
well.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you can see that's a great example of what Reflow can do and what a huge time saver it can be, and also making your development a lot more fun. It makes it really easy to create these responsive layouts, and we're targeting to get a preview release of Reflow out by the end of this year. So like the other things that we're talking about, you can partner with us in helping to refine this tool, give us lots of feedback, and help us to make something that is going to be really a pleasure to use. Now, typography is another important component of creating really rich, beautiful, and expressive web experiences. And it's an area where there's been a lot of recent progress in the last several years. Some of you may remember that about a year ago, TypeKit joined Adobe and brought with it a world-class team with great experience building design and development services for developers and designers on the web. They also came with a great CEO who led that team, and since joining Adobe, has taken on an expanded responsibility, not only continuing to manage TypeKit, but also leading all of our efforts with the Creative Cloud. So to share the latest on TypeKit and the great type solutions that we are helping to bring to the web, please join me in welcoming Adobe's Vice President of Creative Cloud, Jeff Veen.
Thanks, Danny.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, everybody. It is a pleasure here, and thank you, Danny, for that fantastic introduction. I have a lot to share with you today, and I'm really excited about all of this stuff that we're doing with TypeKit, the future of typography and the web, and how it fits in with everything else at Adobe. But before I do that, I want to kind of put things into a bit of context. Because we've been spending a lot of time with the demos that Kevin did and talked about, and what Paul and Danny have been doing. We've been focused a lot on how remarkably complex web design and development has become, and what we're trying to do to help with that. But I'm happy to admit that I can remember a time when it wasn't very complex, and in fact, it looked a little bit like this. Anybody else remember this? Oh, thank God. I thought, worried I'd be the oldest one here, so thank you. There was a time when we didn't have a multi-browser strategy, let alone a multi-device strategy. It's remarkable to think that this was nearly 2 decades ago. And in that amount of time, we've fundamentally changed, frankly, the world with the web. Part of the reason for the web's success was around the constraint that any piece of content could be displayed on any device. That meant a lot of constraint. We had no control at this time over the layout of our pages, over the colors that we could use, or fonts and typography at all. Now that changed pretty quickly. Like the first thing that happened is Netscape gave us the font tag, right? Which gave us rudimentary control over adding fonts to the page, but only rudimentary control. Thankfully, we kind of moved beyond that into a more standards-based approach where we started using CSS and adding more to CSS to really start to get to some of the typographic control that designers had used in the past. So we could do things like weight and variant and line height to give the page a little more character. But the reality was, the only fonts that you had the ability to use were a very basic default set. Something that I think we're all incredibly familiar with now and sort of exhausted by, right? And of course, if this wasn't enough, you could always, right, spice things up a little bit with your favorite font, Comic Sans. Yes, good. Give it up for Comic Sans. So that's kind of all we had, and we did some remarkable work with that, with pure sort of HTML, CSS design, and the standard fonts. We could do some cool stuff. But we knew, all of us, right? We knew deep down inside, like, look, there's thousands of fonts in the world. There's centuries of typographic tradition, and we're kind of ignoring all of that right now. So in 2008, the browser started to support, in a standards-based way, the ability to link a font on a server to a page that your users could download and view that font on the page, right? And it was sort of remarkable. Oh my gosh, we can do that now. People started experimenting with it, finding that the variety of browsers and mobile devices were beginning to support it, but in a mostly incompatible way. And at the same time, the foundries, right, the companies that kind of have the world's fonts and maintain them and curate them and develop them, were looking at ways in which they could do licensing for a whole new platform. And that's sort of where TypeKit came in. In 2009, we launched TypeKit as a platform for serving a collection of fonts, commercial, professional quality fonts, that tried to solve the browser and device compatibility issue for designers and developers, and create a unified license so that you could buy a subscription and use the entire library and pick and choose based on your creativity and not on business model, which we found to be really sort of opened up the expressiveness of the web, and it has become incredibly expressive. So we have seen some amazing examples of what you can do just with fonts and CSS to, in a native way in the browser, start to do these kinds of amazing designs. This is just purely CSS. All of this text is selectable and you can copy and paste, and you can do all the things that you can do with text, including accessible devices and translations and all that sort of stuff. We've seen playful examples of really pushing what the browser is capable of doing with CSS. And it's wonderful to see, just week after week, new examples of this coming out. Companies have been finally able to bring the typographic qualities of their brand natively into the browser, not have to rely on the most important words of their pages being trapped inside of an image or something like that. Great for searchability and that sort of stuff as well. Some of the biggest sites in the web have started to use TypeKit as well. The New York Times was an early adopter. They're using it on a variety of the sections of their website, taking fonts that are hundreds of years old, with all of that rich tradition, translating them digitally and making them available to the web and powered by TypeKit for the compatibility and serving for all that kind of stuff. The iconic fonts from many Condé Nast publications are now available on the web. We host the typography for the New Yorker and things like that. All of Martha Stewart is using TypeKit as well now. It's just growing bigger and bigger. And obviously, publishers are a place where we would get started to bring typographic tradition into the browser. But also e-commerce websites and transactional websites and rich user interfaces. So the place where it's really important that the clarity of information matches not only the brand, but the kinds of tasks that people are trying to do. So we power typography on things like JetBlue or AOL Mail and things like that. And it has, I've been humbled by the growth that we've seen, especially in this last year since we've been at Adobe. So right now, TypeKit is powering the fonts on 1.5 million websites. And in the last 30 days alone, we've served up 8 billion page views for those websites. And you can see how the growth, not just of TypeKit, but of web fonts in general, has been remarkable in just a really, really short amount of time. So it's really thrilling. The foundries that we work with have been fantastic. We now have over 1,200 font families available in the TypeKit library, all included with the subscription that you get. There's 53 foundries that we work with. Some of the best foundries, literally the best foundries in the world, are making their stuff available on TypeKit, and it's really, really exciting. So TypeKit growing like crazy. We're doing lots of deep infrastructure work to TypeKit to maintain not just the amount of growth, but the speed, flexibility of the networks behind it, so it's perfectly safe to trust TypeKit to serve excuse me, the fonts on your website. But part of the goal of TypeKit has always been ubiquity. And not just ubiquity of us, but ubiquity of fonts on the web. We think it's better for the web, it's better for the platform of the web, it's just better all around. And that's why we've been working really closely with Google. Now, many of you are probably familiar with the Google Web Font API. It's a set of open source typefaces that they make available to any website. But what you're not probably as familiar with is the fact that we've been working with Google for the last couple of years on a set of open source technologies behind the serving of the fonts. And that partnership has been fantastic. And we've pushed further what the browsers are capable of and the tools that are available to designers and developers to help them build their sites and do fantastic typography. So I'm really excited to announce that we're moving even farther with Google and deepening that partnership and taking the expertise that TypeKit has had in the serving and the quality of the typography of the web with the deep expertise Google has in the open source community, combining those together. And today, for the first time, I'm happy to announce that we're launching the Adobe Edge Web Font Service. So let me tell you a little bit about what this is. We're taking 500 open source and free fonts that includes the library of Google Web Font API, plus a variety of free fonts from the TypeKit library, as well as, for the first time, a collection of Adobe original fonts, making them completely free. You can use them however you like. You can just take the URLs. You don't need an account. They're not authenticated. Put them anywhere. In your markup, build your own tools. However you want to use those, you can. We believe this will create just a tremendous growth in web fonts across the world. These fonts are going to continue to develop. Both technically, we're doing a tremendous amount of upgrades and improvements to all of these fonts. We're hand-hinting some of the display faces to look as good as they can, both in the simplest devices that support web fonts all the way up to Retina displays and beyond. Right? We're also curating the overall library, searching out and seeking the best typefaces that we can add free to the library. And we're integrating them all into a variety of Adobe products. All of this is going to be served by that global infrastructure that's already serving all of those 1.5 million websites. So based on the TypeKit technology, all of these free fonts are available. So let me give you a little look at what it's going to look like. This is Adobe Edge Web Fonts. It's available right now on html.adobe.com. You can go there and you can start using this immediately. And we talk about some of the services that are available here, but then get down to how you actually use it. Now, we've got a variety of documentation available for how you can build the URLs. You can do it programmatically. It's really deep down a developer service that we're making available. Right? So all the hand coding that you normally do, you can put all of this stuff right in there. We also made this little preview right here so that you can sort of, zip around and check out some of the fonts if you want. You could just kind of switch them over and you can type here and see the fonts, and that's all very nice. As you do that, you can just grab this text right here, copy it, paste it into your markup, and start using the fonts. It's literally that simple. We thought we could probably, though, make it even simpler, and so we've done some integrations into things like Reflow, and some other ones, and you'll see demos of that in just a minute. So very, very simple to use and available immediately. No accounts needed, completely free. So I encourage you to go check that out. Now, the other thing that I had mentioned earlier is that we're including a whole bunch of fonts, and I have a couple of announcements around that too. We've taken a bunch of fonts from the Adobe original library, made them available as well as two new fonts that I think kind of represent a big step forward and a milestone in type design and development at Adobe. Now, we've got a few decades of type design experience in our past. In fact, fonts and display of fonts is sort of at the very core of what Adobe started as a company all those years ago. And for the first time now, we've done a release of a new typeface that's completely open source. It's called Source Sans Pro. We launched this about a week and a half ago, and it's available via our GitHub repository and things like that. This font is designed specifically to be embedded in open source projects. Now, You can include it in any open source software that you're building, web frameworks that you might be creating, themes, or anything like that. If it's open source, you can put Source Sans in there. And Source Sans Pro is designed from the beginning to be incredibly legible on a wide variety of displays and resolutions and things like that, specifically for user interface work. So it looks great in menus, dialog boxes, navigation systems, and things like that. Today, we're launching a new font along with this. In addition to Source Sans now, we've expanded the family to include not just Source Sans, but a new font called Source Code Pro. Ooh, yes, let me show it to you. Source Code Pro, again, completely open source, totally free, and designed as a monospaced font specifically for hand coding, doing markup, and writing all of your code. And you can see some examples in the font, and get a little geeky here with our typography. For example, the capital I, the lowercase l, and the number 1 are all different. So you guys spend a little time in text editors, I'm guessing. That's actually pretty rare in a font, right? If you're crafting a family and you want it to sort of, have a sort of unified look, those characters typically are pretty similar. Just like, here's another example, the uppercase O and the 0, right? Now, when you're coding, when you're writing markup or developing code, the difference between a lowercase l and a 1 is the difference between validating or throwing an error, right? And the constant sort of looking back, like, why do I have an error? Why do I have an error? Oh, it shouldn't be the typeface, right, that's causing the error. And we believe that we've made one of the most legible open source monospace fonts that's ever existed. Starting today, you can use it in all the work that you do. Again, available at our GitHub repository, and get started. Now, both of these fonts are going to be available also via the Adobe Edge Web Font Service and the Google Web Font API. So you can start to use them in any projects that you're using or any web designs. So really great stuff, and I encourage you to check them both out. So yeah, TypeKit continues to grow as the source of commercial, professional quality web fonts. And now the Adobe Edge Web Fonts Service can join that as a place for the best open source, highest quality free fonts in the world. We're really excited about that. But there's one other little thing that I wanted to talk about, and that was that since the very beginning of TypeKit, we knew that two things would be important. One would be the quality of the service and the quality of the fonts in there, and we've worked really hard at that. But just as important would be to take that level of quality and provide the quantity of fonts. And we knew that variety was absolutely critical. And so we've been growing the TypeKit library week after week after week. As I've shown you, we have over 1,200 fonts now available in the library. But we knew that there were just thousands more fonts that were available in the world, and that those should be part of our platform as well. And in particular, there's a tremendous library of both historically important and contemporary, beautifully created fonts that we wanted to get into TypeKit. And I'm so excited to announce that we've signed a partnership now with Monotype. Thanks. Now, those of you that follow a little bit of the world of typography know that Monotype has one of the most amazing libraries of fonts in the world. They've got their Monotype library, they've got the Linotype library, they've got ITC fonts, they've got the Bitstream fonts. We're incredibly excited to announce that we'll be taking 1,000 of the best fonts, making them available in TypeKit. These are some really important fonts that have never before been available via TypeKit. We're also taking a bunch of Adobe's fonts, making them available via Monotype services as well, so choice is there, and it's fantastic. This is really going to push the web forward as well. And we believe with these two announcements, the Adobe Web Font Service, the Edge Web Font Service, and Monotype and TypeKit, that there's really no reason whatsoever to not choose web fonts when you start any project now, no matter what that project is. And we hope you do too, because like I said, we believe that web fonts are a fundamental component of making the web more legible, more usable, more accessible, and ultimately, with all of us working together, more beautiful. So thank you very much.
Nice job.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. Well, you can see how we're doing some really amazing things with type to, again, make the web much more expressive. And while we're talking about code and new fonts that really make code legible and make it so you can differentiate those characters, it's a good time for me to talk about another thing that we realized as we went out and had conversations with many of you over the past couple of years. We realized that there was a need for a web-centric code editor. We all have text editors, of course, that we use to write our code. But these text editors typically don't understand all of the differences of the files that we work on when building web projects. And so we saw an opportunity there for some innovation. And this is what inspired us to begin earlier this summer the Brackets open source project. Brackets is a web-centric code editor that we have built in an open source community from the ground up. And it understands HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And because it understands those files, it is able to offer some really interesting productivity features that allow you to do things like inline editing of CSS and JavaScript from within the referencing HTML file, and the ability to live preview in the browser as you actually make changes in the code. And part of how it's able to do that is because, like Reflow, Brackets is built entirely itself in web technologies. It's built in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And one of the things that that means is that if you can code in Brackets, you can also contribute to Brackets. And we're hoping that you will begin to do exactly that and join what has become an incredibly active community that has joined our core staff from Adobe in achieving 8 releases of the Brackets project since it began earlier this summer. We view Brackets as a great sandbox for experimentation in the web-centric code editor space, and we hope and expect that it will feed into a number of other projects that can incorporate its innovations. In fact, we ourselves at Adobe recognized that we could use this kind of a web-centric code editor to help tie together elements of the workflow with the new Edge tools and services. So we built on top of Brackets and have created a new distribution of Brackets that is our own web-centric code editor designed to work really well with the Edge tools and services. So it gives me great pleasure this morning to introduce to you Adobe Edge Code. Edge Code, like I said, builds on Brackets, but it integrates with some of the Edge services, like PhoneGap Build and the Edge web fonts. And we're going to continue adding new features to Edge Code to further integrate it with other Edge tools and services and with other Adobe products and services. Brackets, of course, will remain at the core of Edge Code, and that will be where we continue to invest and drive innovation for core editing features. So, Paul, maybe you can show us how you would use Edge Code to code up the project that you've been working on this morning.
I would love to. Here's my project. If you recall, we have it working, of course, in the browser. As I scale it down, everything's working pretty well, but I need to continue development on it. Even as I scale it down, I can click through and see those images. And I need to continue development on this because I feel like the slideshow is going backwards.
Oh, you mean the
And
slider.
I want to reverse the direction. I actually want it to go from right to left.
Yep.
So what you typically do is you'd identify the HTML page, determine where maybe that function call is, and then sort through the different JavaScript files to find out where that JavaScript function is. Well, luckily, with Edge Code, it's literally I just select that function call, and I can go to quick edit. So let's take a look. Within the context of my page, I can actually jump right out to that function. Okay,
Nice.
so I don't have to navigate through all these various pages. Right in here, I can change what I need to change. Just reversing the direction right here quickly.
So now you're editing that JavaScript inline from within the HTML file.
Yeah, I don't have to jump out. In fact,
Nice.
it tells me right here that's the JavaScript file.
Yep.
And I can always just reload that page, and we'll see it goes the right
Goes the
direction.
other way.
So
Beautiful.
easy enough. Okay, so that's just JavaScript. That's a quick function I did. Well, what about CSS? You're probably wondering. I need to fix this icon as well. See that joystick's kind of floating out there. And I can select that CSS class. And I'll just do Command-E, just the shortcut, and you can see how it opens that up.
There's your CSS.
Now I'm going to show you something really cool.
I like cool things.
Oh man, I'm excited. But check this out. So it's just floating set to none. What if I want it to float to the left? Look what happened. It
Look at
actually
that.
floats it to the left because I have this live preview, this live connection to my browser.
Right,
I
so
don't
you
have
didn't reload that time.
Yeah, it's great. So I
nice,
can come
yeah.
in here and change what I need to, and it will change accordingly. Even for this paragraph tag, if I want to open that up, maybe adjust the line height a little bit, something like that, you can see what I can do there. So inline editing, CSS, JavaScript, doesn't break my workflow. I'm working within the context of my page. Even going beyond that, I'm not crazy about this color. It's kind of, I don't know, it's like an orange. I'm not sure if it's B76B12.
You know exactly what that is,
no,
right?
I have no idea. I know that's a 1, thanks
Kinda
to Source
painful.
Code Pro.
Yeah, exactly.
So luckily, again, I can do a Command E, and okay, there's
look
the
at that.
color. And you can see, look, I'm changing that color. You see that? It's changing. The word nostalgic is changing in my browser.
So that's amazing. So there's inline editing not only of CSS and JavaScript, but you've got inline editing now of color.
Yeah.
With a real color picker.
You got it.
Nice.
Excellent feature. In fact, let's go beyond that. I've picked the color. I like that red. It matches. Jumping into fonts, I want to go beyond Arial as well. And we have code hinting, but now I want to go ahead and integrate some Edge web fonts. So literally, for that font family,
Wow,
I can pick whatever font I want. Let's go to a fun script, since we want something kind of fun that says nostalgic, like Lecarelli. I don't even know how to pronounce it, yet alone type it in. I don't have to. Drops it in. Our sort of default. And the last thing I need to do is just take that line of code, that JavaScript, which is going to integrate it into that page right
file.
there. So
Yep.
I pick which page I want it to go on, and I'll just paste it right there at the top. In fact, let's just jump back out there and refresh it, and give it 1 second to refresh. Wait for it. Wait for it. You guys in the room, you don't have to be on the stream, by the way. So nonetheless, we'll give it a second to refresh. The font will appear there.
Right,
So
sure.
yes,
Beautiful.
definitely
So we get
able to,
inline editing of CSS, JavaScript, color, and now fonts.
exactly.
Beautiful.
You got it. I'll show it in a sec.
Nice. All right. Fair enough. That's pretty cool. You've got that inline editing of all of those different things that I just listed off, and then that live preview that can be a real time saver, so you can actually see those changes as you make them directly in your code. As I mentioned, both brackets and Edge code are built themselves on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which means they're simple to extend. And Adobe and the community through the open source project have already been doing exactly that, writing a number of extensions that easily add new capabilities to this project. And we're going to continue, like I said, adding features to Edge code itself that further integrate it with the Edge tools and services and with other Adobe products and services. We have a preview of Edge code available today, so please go download it, begin using it for editing your own code, and give us your feedback. We want to, again, engage you in a partnership like we have with the other tools so that you can help us make this a great, fun, easy, and enjoyable tool for doing all of your web projects. And because it is open source, we'd like your contributions. So please also feel free to actually write some code yourself that becomes part of brackets and part of Edge code. So let's now turn our attention to how do we actually test these projects that we're building across the universe of devices. We've been talking a lot this morning about how one of the complexities of the modern web is that we have to deal with all of these different screens and orientations and resolutions. And testing across these can be prohibitively difficult, especially you start to add more and more and more devices. You have to sit there and go through each one and use its controls to load up a page and test that page, see how it looks. And in most cases, you don't even have inspection and debugging information available to you. So it's a real pain in the butt. We think we've solved this problem with a project that we introduced to the world at South by Southwest earlier this year in March called Shadow. And Shadow has gone through what have now been a total of 4 previews. We've had 100,000 downloads of the Shadow project and received a ton of valuable feedback similar to the process that we went through with Animate. And I am proud to introduce to you this morning Adobe Edge Inspect. We've refined Shadow with all of your feedback, and it now consists of a set of lightweight tools that allow you to easily preview and inspect across a range of mobile devices. You can do this wirelessly, so you have total wireless control of these devices. You can remotely load up a page that you're working on from your development machine, your PC or your Mac, and all of those devices load that page. You can then make code changes, force a reload, they all reload simultaneously. And importantly, you have robust debugging and inspection capability, so you can see what's going on a particular individual device where you may want to make an adjustment. It's supported across iOS, Android, and Kindle, so you have support across the major popular mobile platforms. So Paul, I think you're now going to show us how you can actually test this project across the devices you have here on the table.
Yeah, and you can see I have quite a few, and I do want to test it out. I know it's responsive. It has my font in there. Everything's looking good, and I want to test it on these devices. So what I have set up is I actually just have a lightweight app on these various devices, so Android, iOS. It's already running. I also have this Chrome extension. So if we take a peek right in here.
Oh, there they are, yep.
Yeah, you can see I have the Nexus 7, iPad, iPhone, Galaxy S3, okay? This is cool. So I can see my content here. That's great.
So these are all 4 different screen sizes.
Yeah, 4 different screen sizes.
Yep.
And now if I wanted to see whatever content I want on here, it's merely a matter of changing it in my web browser on my desktop. And if you watch on the devices, you can see I've jumped to that other page. So I can start to see with this live connection what my content looks across these different screens. And I'd start to kind of scroll through, make sure everything's looking great, even scrolling down. On the iPhone, these are actually buttons, and they're kind of tight. I don't know if you can tell. They're too close together.
Yeah, your fingers aren't little enough.
Yeah, and I wouldn't know this until I tested on the device. So I'd want to start to debug this.
Yep.
Okay, and I love the fact that I can use inspect
To do it?
to remotely inspect, say, the iPhone 5. So remote inspection, click there. It launches Winery, which is just an open source remote inspection tool.
Wow, look at this. So it's going to now connect up directly over the wireless network.
Yeah, in fact, let's push these out of the way because I really want
to your iPhone.
Yeah, so let's get that right there, and we'll just kind of go down to where the problem is. And
you can see it highlighting, yeah.
Yeah, can you? That's really nice being able to navigate to the part that I have an issue with down to that button. In fact, let's just jump in there and increase, the padding if I want to. As I do that, you can see we have that live connection, and I can start to, manipulate this some more. I'll increase the font size too.
So it's doing this in real time over the wireless network.
Yes, you got it, exactly. So as I start to change it, I can tweak it some more, but you can easily see that it made these buttons twice the size due to this live connection, and now I can select these items much easier.
Beautiful.
Great. I got more for you, though. I want to show you one more thing.
More still? All right.
Quite a bit. Yeah, so what I have here is I was able to debug this, and I feel like this is looking pretty good. And what you do is then you'd probably want to take a screenshot and send it to the client.
Sure.
Even for all of these devices, I'd want to do that.
Yep.
You can go to each device, take your screenshot, transfer it over, compile everything maybe into a PDF and send it to the client, or what you can do directly in this extension using Inspect. It's just clicking right here.
Camera, there
Request
you go.
Screenshots.
Now watch the
flash.
devices. Look at them go.
So it
Look
took
at
those
that.
screenshots.
That's pretty cool. And then where did they go?
It transferred them directly to my desktop, and you can see them right here.
That is
see all of
amazing.
those. Opening them up, I can compile this
There
as
they
a
are. Look at
PDF
that.
and send it off. You can see my font, and everything's looking good in there. So.
Really cool.
All right. Cool.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Appreciate
Impressive. So I think it's pretty easy for you to see what a huge time saver that can be. It seemed like sort of a simple problem, but it's actually been a hard one to solve. And this makes it easy, delightful, and enjoyable so that you can get on with your work and not spend that tedious time clicking through things and having to manually capture those shots for your client. So Adobe Edge Inspect is available today. You can go get it, as you can with the other tools and services that we've been talking about. and go use it and make these projects easy for yourself to test. Now, while we're talking about devices, it's a good time for us to pause and remember that in the device universe, it's no longer just about the browser, but also about applications. And the web platform is playing a critically important role in apps as well as in the browser. And this is the reason that we brought PhoneGap into Adobe about a year ago. What is PhoneGap? PhoneGap is an SDK that enables mobile apps to be written and built using standard web technologies, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And its popularity has been absolutely soaring, including over the past year now that it's been part of Adobe. We've had over 1 million downloads of PhoneGap, which is just stunning, stunning popularity. It is now being incorporated by individual developers and huge companies alike in a variety of mission-critical applications. There are actually a couple of recent independently developed projects that I think are particularly fine examples of the power of PhoneGap and what you can do with it to not only create beautiful experiences, but also to take advantage of local device capabilities. One of these projects is called Cookie for the iPad. And Cookie was developed by a really creative studio that some of you may have heard of called Amanita Design. They are fairly well known for a chart-topping and award-winning game they developed called Machinarium. And they took the talent that they have and they applied it to creating this immersive, interactive experience that is all centered around a stop-motion animation film called Cookie. And they have, in addition to the film itself, a book that is online as part of the experience. They have drawings and sketches. There's a backstory about how the film was made. And they've even included an interactive game, all developed in standard web technologies and built with PhoneGap for the iPad. Another great example that is pushing the boundaries of what you can do with PhoneGap is an application called Untapped. Untapped is a social application that allows you to share with your friends what beers you're enjoying. You may not be surprised to find out that this is one of the favorite applications of the PhoneGap team. And one of the cool things that makes it a favorite is not only the beer part, although that's important, but also the fact that Untapped uses a lot of native device capabilities. So it's all written in standard web technologies like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but it also has access to geolocation capabilities, device notifications, photo upload, and social sharing integration that are all taking advantage of what the device offers. So as you can see, PhoneGap gives you tremendous flexibility and control, but it does come at a cost of some complexity and hassle for the developer because you do have to set up each of the individual native development environments in order to compile your applications for those target platforms. So we've been giving a lot of thought to how we can make that easier and more accessible so that it can be used by anyone who can develop content for the web. And this is what inspired us to develop PhoneGap Build. We've been in beta with PhoneGap Build for more than a year, and like the other projects that we've been talking about, it has benefited tremendously from your feedback during this beta period. And I am pleased this morning to announce the official release of PhoneGap Build. PhoneGap Build allows you to easily build mobile apps that are built on the web platform in the cloud and iteratively test them on all of your target devices. And like I said, we've designed it to be easy enough so that anyone who can create web content can now create a mobile application using PhoneGap Build. So Paul, I think you're going to finish off your project by actually creating a companion application that's built with PhoneGap Build.
Yeah, you got it. It's called The Nostalgist. So this is just an app enabling you to find hard-to-find or specialty nostalgic items.
Yep.
So it's perfect for this project. In fact, I can jump in and really you can find specialty stores by location, all built with web technologies. So you can see right over here I have Edge Code, which is where I'm doing the development. In fact, what I can do, now that I have it to a place where I actually want to
So that was running all in the browser.
Yeah, it's all running in the browser.
Nice. Yep.
And now, again, what I need to do is I need to package it up. I need to make an app out of it for various platforms. Notice I can select open source. So pick from, say, a GitHub repository is what I can do here. Or I can go to private or even upload a zip if I want to. So at this point, I can upload this zip file, which is just my files that you saw a second ago. It will upload them and allow me to make an app. So we'll take that content and
So it now builds that in the cloud once it receives that HTML, that CSS, and that JavaScript.
yeah, and it will do it for iOS, Android. In fact, we'll see here in a second. I can enable debugging, enable hydration. So this is the ability to update the app as well if you start to hand it out to more people. But you can see it build for those various platforms.
There they go. Look at that. So they're just building with those native dev environments in the cloud, taking all that complexity away.
Yeah, exactly. So it's building for all those platforms. You can see the QR code there, so it makes it that easy. It's literally going to your phone, selecting scan, and we'll just wait a second for these to build. It will build for all these platforms.
And then that QR code allows you to just get a shortcut to actually install it as you're developing so you can test and
yeah, and you can hand this out to a number of people, whatever you need to do. But again, as soon as it's done, you take a snapshot with your QR code reader. It will install it on your device, and you can install it for all of these platforms as they start to build. Also, if there's any errors, so if you need to sign a key, say for iOS, it'll flag that and actually point to the docs on how to get that squared away.
Nice.
So it's building now. I think we can all have a little patience, right? It's all right?
Looks like a couple of them finished, yeah.
Yeah.
But not iOS yet, huh?
So yes, it will. In fact, iOS is what I would take, but I got Android available. I can always take a snapshot with my Android device. There we go.
There you go.
Okay.
Finished.
It's funny. It took about 30 or so seconds. But now, if you guys can see that as I hold it over that QR code, let's focus in on it. Starts to install it, as you can see right there. So I'm going to set this down. It starts to install it, as you can see right here. I already have it installed on this Android device, so I've done that already. I can click through.
There it is.
And you can see that content running on this device. So again, it's installing pretty fast. I did this from build.phonegap.com. In fact, there it is. I can launch it. And we'll launch that app. But I can also do this from Edge code as well. So I can literally, with the feature in Edge code, send that directly to PhoneGap build. It will make
without
that
having
app
to go to the website, just
without
directly
having to
from
zip
within
it
the
up.
tool.
Yeah, exactly. You got it. So you can see the content right there. I can do all my
is.
debugging now from here on out.
Beautiful.
Cool.
Thank you. That's amazingly fast and easy. So you can see how that's become now accessible to build and test apps in the cloud for anyone who can create web content, and you don't have that hassle of having to set up each of those native development environments. PhoneGap Build is available today, so you can go immediately log in and begin using it. Before we proceed, Paul, I want to thank you for your help this morning in building out this project and showing us all the Edge tools and services.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
So you've now seen each of the Edge tools and services in action. Edge Animate for creating interactive and animated web content. Edge Reflow for designing responsive websites. TypeKit for using high-quality fonts on the web. Edge Web Fonts to get started with free web fonts. Edge Code for coding HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Edge Inspect for previewing and inspecting web designs on devices, and PhoneGap Build for packaging mobile apps in the cloud. Together, these are the Edge tools and services, and they share a common set of core principles. They are optimized to create that mobile-ready web content and applications. They are each focused on a specific task so that you can use them individually, they work well together, and they work well when mixed and matched with other third-party tools and services. And each one improves your productivity in ways that you've just seen, but without hiding that underlying code that is so important in the modern web. So you guys are the ones that create the amazing experiences that make the web what it is and push the boundaries of what is possible to do on the web. And we view it as our role to help you do this. And we know that the best way to make that work is through partnership. And I hope you've seen evidence this morning of that approach that we've been taking, of really collaborating with you to make the web better and build the best tools possible to take advantage of all of those latest capabilities. We do bring decades of our own experience and expertise to the work that we're doing in the standards and as part of a broader open source community that make up the foundation of the web. And we also, of course, do know a thing or two about building great tools. But again, we're not doing that alone. We can't do it alone. We are focused now on really incorporating your feedback and increasingly incorporating your code. And we are doing this because we do want to make it easy and fun for you to create the web. So you may now be wondering, how do you actually get all this good stuff? How do you get the Edge tools and services? Well, it's actually pretty easy. We launched the Creative Cloud back in April. Kevin mentioned that a little bit earlier. And we did this to make it easier for you to get all of Adobe's creation tools, plus a number of integrated online services, including things like file sharing, collaboration, and the ability to publish both apps and websites. One of the very best things about the Creative Cloud is that you get all of the latest updates to this software as soon as it's ready, without having to wait for some artificial release cycle. Things just become available. And this is especially important in the fast-changing world of web technology, which is one of the things that makes the Creative Cloud a very natural way for us to bring you the Edge tools and services. The Creative Cloud is available with both free and paid memberships. We want to make it easy for you to create these great web experiences, as I've said. So you'll probably be happy to know that all of the Edge tools and services that we've released today are included in a free membership of the Creative Cloud, including your free copy of Edge Animate. Let me repeat that. Everything you see here, there, everything you see there is free. We cannot wait to see what you are going to do with these new tools and services, what you're going to create, and what new experiences are going to push the boundaries of what is possible on the web. Go get started now at html.adobe.com. Thank you for your time this morning, and go create the web.